Hi guys, it's Theodore here, Chief Instructor from ConsultingHQ, and on today's video podcast we're going to talk about the recruiting process used to get into a Big 4 consulting firm. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to get stuck into the question today. What is the recruiting process like typically at a Big 4 consulting firm, or almost any consulting firm for that matter? Now, as always, before we get started, make sure you check out the ton of freebies that are on the ConsultingHQ.com website. I've listed those out in the comments below. There is a ton of stuff that is absolutely going to help you out in your career. Everything from CV templates to ebooks to how to get into consulting, and look, everything else in between. And by the way, if you do want to get into management consulting, don't forget, make sure you enroll in the Management Consulting Bootcamp course. It's probably the best out there on the internet. It's going to help you land a role and make sure that you're successful once you're in a consulting firm as well. So coming back to the question, the short answer is it is very difficult normally to get into a consulting firm. But the answer is longer and more complicated than that. And the reason being is because there are a whole host of different variables. For example, are you a graduate looking to get into a consulting firm? Or maybe you're already in a corporate role and you're looking at transferring from one job, maybe in industry, and moving into management consulting. And depending on which path you choose, depends on the recruiting process. Now, for the purposes of this video, we're just going to focus in on what a typical process looks like. So we're not going to be talking about a graduate program, but let's say you've spent a couple of years in corporate, you've got some level of experience, some certifications, a qualification, maybe a degree or something like that, and you want to apply to get into Big 4, and you want to get some insight into what the recruiting process is. Well, I can tell you firsthand, and even for all the other staff members here at Consulting HQ who have also gone through the recruiting process at Big 4, we can hand on heart tell you that it is quite lengthy. So let's start at the very beginning. So let's assume you hand your CV, you uploaded it onto Deloitte.com recruiting website, and you've applied for a role in some area that's got to do with management consulting. So the turnaround time between when you apply and you upload your CV and cover letter versus when you finally get a response could take anywhere between maybe a couple of days all the way through up to a couple of weeks. But if you do get a response, then typically the first part of the recruiting process is what we call the screening call. And this is where HR gives you a call directly on your cell phone, and usually goes for about 15 minutes to half an hour. And that screening call is designed to do a couple of things. First, the HR person will ask you questions about your CV. And what they want to do is just test out whether or not your skills and experience matches what you have written down on your CV. And they'll ask you a couple of what we call weeding questions or test questions, just to make sure that what you've got on your CV is accurate. So to that end, make sure that your CV matches and is accurate and is truthful in terms of your past experience. The second thing too is that they want to get an insight and a little bit of a handle in terms of your understanding and awareness of what it's like to work for a consulting firm. If you've got absolutely no idea, then you probably won't make it past that first 15 to 20 minute screening call. But if you do, then that's a big tick in the box for the recruiters. So the next step after that, assuming you've passed the screening call, is where you've got what we call like the first round interview. Now, sometimes this will be held with a partner, sometimes it'll be held with a middle manager or more of a senior manager, like a principal or director level, plus a couple of other people. And on that interview, or during that interview, they'll ask you about your history, your experience, your background. They'll delve into your skills. But more importantly, they'll ask you a couple of key questions. And the first question will be with respect to the job that you're applying for. They want to test your knowledge to see if you've got your understanding or have an understanding of the functional area you're moving into. Now, let's assume you're moving into a tech strategy consulting role or a business strategy consulting role. They'll ask you deep questions around maybe financial modeling and financial planning, mergers and acquisitions. Or if you're moving into tech consulting, they'll ask you about cloud and how you maybe secure cloud, or how you do an IT strategy, or maybe what are the top 5 things that are on the CIO's mind at any given time. So they'll ask you some technical questions. And then the second key set of questions that they'll ask will be with respect to how well you know the consulting role itself and the organisation that you're applying to. And this is where most people fail. Say you're applying for Ernst & Young or PwC. If you can't talk about PwC in terms of its size, its global footprint, how it's structured and who the seniors are, then again, it's probably most likely going to be a fail. So that's the first round interview after the screening call. So already by this stage, you've gone through 2 interviews. Then depending on what level you're going at or applying to, you'll probably get a case study. And the case study is designed to test your critical thinking and analysis that's relevant to the job. They want to make sure that you've got the smarts and aptitude to be able to service and work with clients and solve very complex and technical business challenges and problems that could be related to a whole variety of different areas. It could be operations management, process management, business strategy, like I mentioned before, or maybe even something a little bit different and that has different dynamics, like workforce change as an example. So the case study will be designed to test your knowledge and understanding around core business concepts, so that they can get confidence that when they throw you into the deep end with a client to solve maybe a mergers and acquisitions problem, that you'll have the right thinking and aptitude to be able to solve those problems. So that's the case study test. And that's the third part of the interview and recruiting process in consulting. The last, or rather the second last part, would be with the actual partner themselves. And this could be either a one-on-one, it could be maybe a coffee catch-up, it could be a lunch, or it could be something a little bit more formal where you're going one-on-one and in a meeting room and actually meeting with the partner themselves. And this is where the partner wants to know you a little bit better and get an understanding of the type of person you are, what sort of interests and background do you have, what your hobbies are. Because ultimately the partner will be paying for your wage and they want to know who they're working with, right? So are they going to get along with you? Do they have confidence that you're going to support them in helping them achieve their goals, which is ultimately to grow their part of the business and keep clients happy and deliver really amazing work to clients as well. So once you pass that partner interview, then by that stage, you've pretty much not guaranteed, but you'll likely get a job offer in a consulting firm. The only other last part would be a last interview with a HR manager again. And this is what we call the negotiation phase. And this is where probably about maybe 15 minutes to 30 minutes is where you'll have either a one-on-one meeting with an HR not manager but recruiter, or even a phone call chat where they want to get some insight into what level you're looking for, what pay package and remuneration you're looking for, and just to, maybe it's like a final screening. Probably that's the best way of describing it. Make sure that you are aligned and that you are deeply vested in actually getting the job and going forward with receiving an offer from that consulting firm. And from my experience, on many occasions, it's that final phone call that can sometimes, I would say many occasions, sometimes be a make or break, where the candidate has become a little bit too confident in the fact that they have definitely believed they've got the role, but in reality, the HR recruiter has picked something up that's like a little bit of an anomaly and relayed that feedback back to the partner, and then suddenly the application is rejected and the recruiting process comes to a standstill. So don't be that person. But that last final meeting with the HR recruiter is usually the final step in the recruiting process in Big 4. And once that takes place, then and you are successful, then most likely you will receive an offer in your email. That will be a formal document that outlines your terms and conditions and letter of employment. And of course, more importantly, what remuneration you will receive upon joining that consulting firm. So that's it. I've mentioned about 4 or 5 different steps there, and that is the recruiting process to get into Big 4. Now, over how long does this period take is probably the million-dollar question that people ask, and I get asked this all the time. If you follow me on Reddit or any of the other forums that ConsultingHQ.com is a part of, you'll know we get a ton of questions all the time. And particularly, by the way, if you do have any questions, make sure you drop a question in our community forum. It is on the ConsultingHQ.com website, right at the very top, community forum. You can't miss it. If you've got any questions about recruiting process, drop me a comment or a message. We will respond straight away. I would say that the interesting thing about the recruiting process is that it can take a very long time. And in my experience, I've actually personally been through a recruiting process where it took me a year from the time it started to the time it ended to actually join this firm. That's right, it took me 12 months, but I finally got in. Just for some reason, it took 12 months. And maybe that's for a different video, I'm not too sure. Hopefully for yourself, if you're applying to get into Big 4, it doesn't take as long. Typically, I'd say the process should not take more than 8 weeks, so 2 months. And if it does, something is wrong. And if it does take a long time, it may be because the partner has submitted a major proposal and they're desperately scrounging for resources to make sure that if they win that big contract, they've got enough people to put onto that contract. But if it goes for longer than 8 months, yes, there is something wrong, or maybe just for some reason they've had their budget taken away from them, or the business has taken a downturn. But that's the maximum. I'd say ideally somewhere between 3, 4, 5 weeks from the time you start, from the time you finish. That is ideally when or how long roughly it would take to join a Big 4 firm, and that's how long the recruiting process is. So anyway, we've covered a lot of ground just then, and hopefully it helps. Like I said before, there's a ton of free resources that are available on our website. Make sure you check it out, consultinghq.com. It's pretty easy to remember. And please drop me a comment. We will do our absolute best to reply that is tailored to your own specific situation, and we'll do it in a very timely manner. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop it a like and make sure you subscribe. And of course, we'll see you next time.